Welcome back to BetterAvecBourbon. Today I'll be walking through 3 standard releases of Maker's Mark. Their standard Kentucky Straight Bourbon, the most common release, 46 French Oak Bourbon, and Bourbon Cask Strength. I'll provide tasting notes for each, compare my notes to what Maker's Mark says on their website, and then rank them and discuss when I'd use each. For many people, the Maker's Mark Kentucky Straight Bourbon is the first bourbon they like, and it sticks out on a shelf with the iconic red wax sealed lid. Maker's Mark is under Jim Beam and part of Beam Suntory more generally. Grab a bottle, a Glencairn, and let's get to it. Let's start with the standard release. The Maker's Mark Kentucky Straight Bourbon. Grab your bottle, Glencairn, and pour about an ounce. The widest part of the glass measures about 2 ounces, so keep that in mind with your pour. This bottle is just the half size, but as you can tell, the bottle shape is pretty consistent throughout the lineup. And they all don the red wax seal. The color has a nice caramel copper tone to it. There's no age statement on the front of the bottle, but they typically age their bourbon 6 to 7 years. It comes in at 45% ABV for a pretty standard 90 proof. Part of what makes Maker's Mark more approachable is that in a world where rye is usually second on a bourbon's mash bill, Maker's Mark has red winter wheat. And if you didn't know, wheated bourbons are characterized by being sweeter, smoother, and generally more approachable. For aroma, Maker's Mark says we should be getting sweet oak, vanilla, bright fruit, and wheat prevail in the nose. I'd say that's pretty accurate. I get a sweet, oaky smell with hints of vanilla and caramel. Next, the Maker's 46. Grab your bottle, a Glencairn, and pour. You can identify the bottle by the red font and the big 46 on the front. Looking at the pour, I find the color to be a bit more deep red in color, or auburn if you will. No age statement on the bottle, so we'll say it's also 6 to 7 years, and the ABV is typically 47%. Perhaps Maker's 47 would have been a more fitting name. The first 6 or so years of the making process is the same as the standard release, but where it differs is that instead of bottling after 6 years, they add charred or seared French oak staves to the barrel and let it sit for another few months. This introduces a baking spice element, which to me gives a punch of vanilla and cinnamon on the nose alongside green apple, oaky smoky, and vanilla. Which to me gives a punch of cinnamon on the nose alongside green apple, oaky smoky, and vanilla. Maker says we should be getting hints of toasty French oak, caramel, and baking spices, so that's pretty bang on. Lastly, we have the Maker's Mark Cask Strength. From left to right, we have least to most expensive and least common. It's about $45 USD through Total Wine, and commonly around $100 Canadian, compared to the 46, which I last picked up for about 55 Canadian, and the standard, which is about 45 Canadian, so like 10 USD. Grab your Glencairn, add a splash, and give it a swirl. Main signifier of the cask strength is a black band in the middle of the label, but there are other variations of these bottles as well, as can be seen on the Maker's Mark website. Once again, no age statement, so again, likely in that 6 to 7 year range. This one is 55.5% ABV, or 111 proof, but the proof can range from 108 to 114. Let's give it a swirl. Color profile is pretty close to the original, but just a touch deeper reds, but still has a copper quality to it, which makes sense since it's just an uncut version of the standard offering, so there's no dilution happening. This will also crank the oak, vanilla, and wheatiness of the original up to 11. Baker says for aroma we should get big oak, vanilla, and caramel. Lining it up to the 46, which is a touch deeper in the reds. For smell, I get green apple, oak, and vanilla, so quite accurate. I always find the oak smell reminds me of green apple. But now that we've got a pour and a sniff of each, let's dive in for the taste test. The cask strength tastes like how it smells. Green apple, oak, and vanilla. For its proof, it's really smooth thanks to the winter wheat. Maker says for taste, we should get robust and warm texture with notes of caramel, vanilla, and spice, followed by a long finish in the front of the tongue, harmonious, with no harsh bitterness. A good assessment as you definitely get some hotness from the proof, but it's pretty smooth from start to finish and the flavors are bang on. For Maker's 46, I get apple, cinnamon, vanilla, and oaky smoking. Maker says we should get mildly sweet and uniquely layered with deep rich notes of vanilla and baking spice. For finish, velvety subtle and pleasingly long. I do find with the French Oak there's more vanilla, but the spiciness definitely makes this taste a bit hotter than the standard release, which is probably what contributes to the pleasingly long that they're hinting at. It has a good mouthfeel for its price point and proof. And lastly, we have the standard release. I get a green apple, oaky smoky taste to it, with accents of vanilla. Unsurprisingly, it's really just a mellowed version of the cask strength. Maker says for taste we should get sweet and balance of oak, vanilla, and fruity essences. And for finish we should get smooth and creamy with a pleasant soft spice and clean finish. I personally don't get a ton of variety on the fruity essences. It's really just the apple note I associate with oak, but it's quite smooth. I think if I were to rank them, I'd have these with the cask strength in first, 46 in second, and the standard release in third. But that's also the order of most expensive to least. The cask strength typically double the cost of the standard release for me. For me, these all have their place. The cask strength is excellent to sip neat, or especially for an extra smooth, wheated old-fashioned. The 46 you could sip neat, but I'd primarily use it for cocktails. It's excellent in whiskey sour, though I'd like a little bit more proof for something like an old-fashioned. And lastly, the standard release is smooth and sweet, making it great for cocktails where the bourbon should be more of a supporting cask, like say a paper. And lastly, the standard release. It's smooth and sweet, making it great for cocktails where the bourbon should be more of a supporting cask, like say a paper plane where you don't want to bury the Aperol and Amaro flavors. Thanks everyone for watching. Do you have a go-to Maker's Mark bottle? Is it one I didn't mention? Leave a comment down below. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like it, press that like button, hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.